So you've seen the initial video of this 2x2 convection stove with the ash clean out system, the how-to on how to lay out the outside shell and put in some of the components. And you came back because you want seconds. If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Matthew. I own MSJ Customs Welding and Fab, local to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis. And this is the second video on this 2x2 convection stove. The last one we touched on building the outside shell as well as putting in some of the components. So in this video we will touch on putting some of the convection tubes in, how to do it the simplest way possible, as well as any tips I might have along the way. So if you've been following along with the CAD designs, we will be picking up on page 9 of 12. And if you haven't bought the CAD designs, maybe you should. Maybe you should. I'm selling the CAD designs for 29 bucks, and if you want them, I'll leave a link down below on how you can get a hold of them. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. So I like to begin at the bottom of the convection tubes. I've got item 2 and 3. I'm gonna put these up now, put them in a nice, clean 90. This is gonna set me up for success down the line, so this whole stove isn't leaning when I finish it. This is why I like doing a couple steps in advance, because when you get to stuff like this, it's so much less complicated to just assemble instead of having to cut and assemble and weld at the same time. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip the stove so that the face of the stove is to my left side. And I'm going to use some of the offcuts that we have left from when we cut out the angles on these convection tubes. I'm going to use these as a backstop. So I'm going to put it on the side and get it flush with the face. Fantastic. Now I have a backstop. I'm going to take one of these angle pieces that we just fit up and I'm going to position it so that this angled piece is about halfway down that cut and fold that we made. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tack this into position. Now you want to double check that you still have flush on the face, because this is the key point that we will base all the convection tubes off of. If this tube is off, the whole stove will be off. So you want to take your time and just double check things as you go. Now that this initial dimension is set, again, I'm going to use the offcuts as a guide all the way down the stove. I'm going to take these, just move to the next spot. The initial convection tube is going to set the dimensions all the way down the stove, and that's no exception for the bottom. So basically, what I want to do is each time I put in a convection tube, I want to gap the distance side to side, and then I want to match the distance along the bottom. And again, use these tools to set the dimension side to side. I'll take my next convection tube, flush to the bottom. Put the tubes in, match my distance on the bottom. Once you've got the sides and the bottom tacked into place, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip it to the opposite side. I mentioned that all the tubes will be based off of the initial tube. I wasn't kidding. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in item 4, these small cubes. I'm going to use that to space out the convection tubes on the opposite side wall. So I'm looking at this now, and I've got the back side to my left. This is when the use of magnets come into play. You want to get this item flush and even with the initial convection tube that we put in. You have a backstop, now would be an ideal time to use it. And I do it this way because if you do have any flaws in the fit up, it's at least going to be on the bottom and it's not going to be as noticeable. Now would also be a good time to check the dimension of this this side tube, item 2. Looks good. We'll keep going. So as I'm moving along the bottom and the side wall of the stove, I want to use the same spacing method as I did on the opposite side, which is just using the offcuts to mimic the distance as I go along the side. Piece.
Looking for the best music videos? Well,
Again, if you have any gaps, it's not a huge deal. Just get you a big clamp. Go ahead and pull that in so it's nice and tight again. Going along, the stove bottom should look like this. The goal is to have these small pieces, item 4, going all the way down in a nice even line. I'd like to see some even spacing along the bottom as well as even spacing along the top. Again, it helps to use some of the offcut tubing to mimic that dimension. So I went ahead and put the side tubes on, I put the bottom tubes on. The last thing to do is put the top tubes on. But while I have this open and accessible, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to weld this top seam. Also going to weld in these seams. Once I put these top tubes on, I won't have access to this spot of the shell, so I want to weld it now. So we've made it to the top of the stove, finally almost done. And I'm going to continue to use the same spacing technique as I've been using this whole time. I'm going to use some of the offcuts to mimic the distance between each of these tubes. I like to tack up the bottom and then set the distance. So once you have that initial one set, double check the dimensions. I believe this is kind of the easiest section of the build. Basically, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get the bottom of the tube flush, give it a tack. Then I take my offcuts, use it to space out the top, and then give it a tack. Get the bottom tube flush, space the top with an offcut. Set the bottom flush, set the top tube. So it is the following day at 5:25 a.m. It is -18 outside, so silly as I may look, I will be in bibs for the next couple of videos. The stove itself is about 65% done. What I'm going to do now is just weld this thing out. I'm going to end this video with just a time lapse of me welding it. You can skip it if you'd like. Now again, if you've gotten anything out of this video, leave a like, comment, sub maybe. You know, I do these videos to help people, and my goal is just that. The goal is to help someone build this, make it as easy as possible. And if I've done that, maybe show a little bit of love. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's get into it.